we had talked about going to Egypt like 10 years ago, but there was some unrest there. And so we didn't go. So we always thought that we needed to go to Egypt. So anyway, so we were both kind of on one accord and we went to Egypt, and it was a life-changing experience. And over there, I learned about this. It's called the Ankh. And when you look at the hieroglyphics, they're like they always have the Ankh in their hand. And for the pharaohs and the kings, are for the what they call the initiates, the ones who knew the mysteries of life, you would see them pointing it toward their mouth, or they would be pointing it toward them like they were giving them the keys to life. And the key to life is being connected to the spirit. These pharaohs, they had knowledge, and it seemed like it was knowledge from the heavens. It was knowledge that other people didn't know. And those are the mysteries. And life is a mystery. And when we all love mysteries. I love mysteries. And so you always want to be surprised, and you always want to be learning something new. In a mystery, you find out who killed the person or whatever. So this is talking about the mysteries of life and knowing the mysteries of life. And so that's what the spiritual MD is all about. So I just wanted to explain that. And that's why we talk about in the opening is all this ancient stuff, because I forgot who the philosopher is, but it says that if you want new ideas, you ought to read old books. And so one of the oldest books is those hieroglyphics. That's a message that has tried to be transmitted for over 10,000 years. So I've been reading old books. I've been studying old philosophy, and you get all of these new ideas. And so, and let me tell you another reason why I thought about Spiritual MD. So I'm following all these people on YouTube to help me understand quantum physics, because quantum physics helps to explain spirit. And hopefully we'll get to talk more about that. And I talk about that in my school course. But anyway, so I'm following people like Bruce Lipton, who's talking about spirit, and he's a cell biologist. Teresa Bullitt on Mystery Teachings, and that's what I'm into now. She's a physicist, a quantum physicist, and she's talking about the importance of spirit. I follow Joe Dispenza, who's a chiropractor, who talks about spirit. Greg Braden, who wrote the book Purely Human, that I'm going to do a whole video series on. He's a geologist, so he talks about electromagnetic fields and Earth. And so all these scientists are talking about spirit. So I consider myself a scientist. I was brought up in a Christian home with my dad being a Baptist minister, but I'm also a scientist. And so I want to understand it on a scientific level, and that's how I'm trying to explain it to you. But that's what my new endeavor is. And you always need to have a spark, something that you're trying to learn, something that you're trying to discover. Because I put in the daily post in the school group is that you're never too old to grow. I have a garden, and it's just, if you really want to understand growth, then you want to see how the plants, they always are growing up and out, up and out. They don't really follow a straight line. When I go out to my garden, I'm surprised. I'm like, wow, man, these cucumbers, they just grew. Okay, they grew up and out, and they seem to, as they expand, they grow faster. And that's how you should look at your life, is that as you grow, you should expand. And I think a lot of times as we get older, we contract. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. We can't contract. You have to always expand. The universe is expanding. If you look at the trees outside, they're expanding. The rose bushes, they're expanding. So nature normally is designed to expand. And we have to understand we're a part of nature. So we ought to always be expanding. That's how you become ageless. So if you can pull up the slides, we're going to have some slides today. And I think once you put them up, I can control them. Is that right, Rebel?
That is correct. And unfortunately, you talk about expanding. The only thing that's expanding is my waistline, Doctor. Help me.
Yeah, well, we got see. Well, we'll work on that. I really think spirit's involved in that too. And if we get our spirit right, our weight gets right, everything gets right once we get fully aligned. And so that, I mean, it takes. Hey, this is a lifelong process, and there's some mountains and some valleys. So we have to be comfortable in both places, and we need to always know, hey, when we have this little hiccup in the road, it's just a matter of getting realigned, and we can get back on the path that we want. We'll work on some things about your weight, Rebel. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that behind the scenes, okay? So, all right. So the 7 myths that are making you age faster, and that's the last thing we want to do. You're gonna age anyway, okay? And there's a song that says, everybody wants to live forever, but nobody wants to grow old. And I'm like that. Hey, man, that should be my theme song, is that everybody wants to live forever, but nobody wants to grow old. So we're going to try and figure out how we can do that, not grow old. And when you understand and get connected with your spirit and the spirit, you will find out that your spirit does live forever. We just don't want our body to grow old prematurely. So anyway, so let's go. Let me see how I control these slides. I think I'll do it this way. All right. So the myth: you can't change your DNA, so why try? Many believe aging patterns are predetermined by genetics, making anti-aging efforts futile. Well, that is not true. Okay, only 10 to 15% of aging is genetic. Scientific research shows that genetic factors play a surprisingly small role in how we age. So we need to stop talking about, oh, my mom had hypertension, so I'm going to have hypertension. My mom had breast cancer, so I'm going to have breast cancer. My dad was an alcoholic. It was in his genes, so I'm going to be an alcoholic. Stop saying that. Stop looking at your past history and thinking that's what's going to happen. My dad had hypertension, but he lived in a whole different age than I did. He was in World War II. He grew up in a segregated South. He did not have access to proper health care. So his hypertension got worse and worse and worse. It destroyed his kidneys, and he was on dialysis, and he passed away at age 69. And if you look, I'm going to be 65 in August. If you look at a picture of my father and you look at a picture of me at 65, and I will, believe me, we look totally different. I grew up in a different age, okay? I didn't have the stresses. I didn't go to war. I did not live in a purely segregated South. I did not feel like I was held back from what I wanted to do. So I have a different perspective. I have a different mindset. So you're not genetically determined to be a certain way, all right? So you have control. Your lifestyle, your mindset, and your environment shape your aging. That's what I'm talking about. My dad had a different lifestyle. He had a different mindset. He had a different environment. And so he aged differently. All right. Same way with my mom. Daily choices like nutrition, sleep, stress management, and physical activity dramatically impact your biological age. And that's why I've been talking about stress so much, because when you're under stress, it throws off your whole biologic system. It makes it where you can't sleep. You don't eat properly. You either eat late or you eat fast foods. It decreases your physical activity because either you're tired or you're stressed out doing things. All right. So it's epigenetics. Epigenetics means there's things above your genes. Your genes are just a suggestion box. Okay. You don't have a gene for cancer. You don't have a gene for hypertension. You do not have a gene for diabetes. You can have an environment that increases your likelihood of all of these, the way you eat, your stress, your environment. And this is true. If you go to other countries, they have different diseases based on what their environment, what their stress is like, or whatever. I'll tell you, we have some doctors that came from India that I know, and they said there's no such thing as colon cancer over there. You know why? Because in their environment, they always make fresh yogurt every day. And it's just a custom there that they make their own yogurt and they eat it every day. Well, they're feeding their GI system every day. And so they very, very rarely have colon cancer. When they came here and saw this, they were like, what is it? Okay. So your environment, your culture, it will determine what type of diseases you're susceptible to and which ones